In this video, I'm going to cover why ego will kill your creative journey. I used to think that the biggest threat to being a creative was not having the right gear, not being prepared enough. A lot of things can come to mind when it comes to that, but the real killer, and I've learned this over the years, is your ego. That's the one thing that'll stop you from ultimately being the creative you want to be, or be the creative that you want people to collaborate with. So ego can get mistaken for confidence extremely easy. Especially being a creative, you want to be able to be confident because that's how you will succeed. Being able to put your ego aside is how you're able to succeed over a long period of time. There's a lot of things with ego and confidence. When I think of ego, I think of stuff that is loud. It's saying, I don't need that feedback. I don't need this. I don't need that. This person doesn't know what they're saying. All these things. And when you talk about confidence, you talk about, I know what I'm doing, I'm strong in what I'm doing, I have confidence in what I'm doing. But the people that are working with me are confident and strong in what they're doing, and that's how collaboration works. Basically, there's a voice, and that voice in your head is either ego or it's confidence. And when it's ego, that is the thing that'll kill you as a creative. Ultimately holds you back when it comes to creating. So when I was with the Seahawks in the back end of my kind of career with them, I was a manager and I was able to hire people. For me, I had one rule when it came to hiring. I didn't care how talented you were. I didn't care of how hard of a worker you were. What I cared about was if you had an ego or not. And for me, working in a team and working in a team of creatives where everyone has their stamp on something, not having an ego was absolutely huge. And the reason it was so crucial for me was pretty simple. It was the fact that you had to be willing to learn, you had to be willing to take constructive criticism, and you had to be able to take feedback well. And that doesn't just go into big corporation in a creative, that goes into being a creative everywhere. I'm in a place now where I make something, I send it off, I get feedback, and sometimes I agree with the feedback and sometimes I don't. But I know that being able to put that ego aside and know that the feedback is coming from a place of meeting a brand or coming from a place of how another creative thinks, you have to take that into consideration. Being on set and having so many people that are specialized in so many different things has been great. This has been a great ego check because I'm not perfect in every single aspect. I'm not perfect in one aspect, and so many others are perfect. Being able to ask questions has been something that has been huge for at least me, and something huge that I've taken and what I've learned with my time at the Seahawks and what I learned in kind of being in a manager and dealing with personalities and people into the freelance filmmaking world. So at the end of the day, like ego and being a creative are two things that cannot collide, and it kind of needs to be checked at the door. So the next thing I'm gonna get into is why ego makes you afraid to fail as a creative. Kind of just talk about that. But before I get into that, I'm running up on my favorite coffee shop, Monorail Espresso. So I'm gonna get a coffee and then sit down and then we'll talk about that. So I'm in this right now where ego makes you afraid to fail. And it's something that I struggle with every single day because as a creative and as a way of learning, the only way forward is failure. And ultimately that is something that I think gets underlooked when it comes to being a creative. Now, the way ego comes into that is that we as humans have these egos and we have this idea that if we fail, we are failures. And instead of looking at it as failing as a way of learning, the only way you're gonna learn is if you fail. An example of something that previously happened that was, in my books, a failure and I kind of had to check my ego at the door was I was working on a client project in DaVinci Resolve, and it was the first time DaVinci ever burned me. I went to bed the night before, put an export up for review, came back the next morning with revisions, and my project was there, all the files were there, but my sequences were gone. And as you know, if you're an editor, sequences are important because that's the story. This for me is an example on why autosave is so important, and also manual save for that matter. This has not happened to me in DaVinci yet, and It was the first time it happened to me while being a freelancer, while being paid to do a project. So I had two options. One, I could try to get through it with final exports, which I tried to do for a little bit. And then it came to the point where I had a Zoom edit session with someone from the brand I was working with, and I just had to remake the whole project. So I spent probably 4 hours that night after a shoot at home at my computer. For me, it was an ego check because it was embarrassing. It was a lesson I learned. The moral of this story is as a creative and as someone who creates something, and really anyone for that matter, and a lot of people I know relate to this, you have to put your ego aside and accept failure as a passageway of growth. It's also an example of ego because I probably look like a stupid person, look like a crazy person, talking to a camera in public, but you gotta put your ego aside to get the content you want and practice something that you just wanna be better at. So to sum it all up, I think the last thing I want to touch on with this is that comparison is stopping us from creating. I think everyone is in a place where they compare themselves to others. In this field, comparing yourself to someone that might get more views, might have this look more natural, might live in a bigger city, whatever it may be. I think that that's something that ultimately stops you from creating is the fact that you are comparing. And I do it myself. I compare myself to other creatives who are in the same niche who might be getting more eyeballs, more brand deals, whatever it may be. And it stops me from creating. But that's where you have to kind of put your ego aside and know that they have gone through the same failures, they have gone through the same experimentation. And it's all part of this process of creating and this process of filmmaking and telling a story. All right, I'm meeting my fiance downtown, so I'm gonna wrap the video here, but I'm very passionate about letting an ego go. It's something that I've worked into my professional career my entire life. It's something I've worked into my personal career right now. And I think it's something that's extremely important for creators. And I think if you want to make the next step, if you want to be able to learn, if you want to be able to create, if you want to be able to experiment and take risks, you're gonna have to let go of that ego. So if that's something you relate to, let me know down in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know, and it helps the algorithm out, gets this video views for people that don't usually view it, and it brings people to the channel. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next one.